Today's decision in 303 Creative permits businesses to turn away customers because of who they are, based on a claimed expressive interest. This radical opinion is far outstep of the will of the American people and our values as Americans. It is a significant departure from decades of established cases that all uphold the principle that our nation is committed to equal justice for all. That's inscribed on the U.S. Supreme Court. Justice Sotomayor, in her dissent, made loud and clear that members of the LGBTQ community deserve to be treated on the same terms as everybody else. This opinion undermines that right. This sweeping opinion promises to destabilize the public marketplace, enabling and encouraging all types of businesses, not just those who make websites, to have a First Amendment right to refuse customers because of who they are. That means a business could refuse to serve an interracial couple, claiming that interracial marriage is wrong. It means a payroll company or a photographer could say, I don't want to do business with women-owned businesses because I don't believe women should be working outside the home. It means a bookseller of religious texts could say, I'm not going to sell books to a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints because I don't believe that it's legitimate religion, and so on. This case will have the impact to cause considerable mischief, undermining the principle that once you open up the doors to the public as a business, you have to serve all comers. In Colorado, we prize equality and fairness, and we've protected individuals in the public marketplace for over 100 years. We're going to work hard, working within this opinion, to make sure that we can and we will hold accountable those who engage in unlawful discrimination. Today, I stand as an ally. Today, all of us stand together supporting the LGBTQ community, recognize that people are hurting, being told by the United States Supreme Court that they are not entitled to equal treatment under the law. We must stand together, and we must stand against discrimination of all kinds. I know many are angry and frustrated, and let me end on a word of hope. Today we are in the Ralph Carr building, named after a former governor who refused to take part in any policy that would intern Japanese Americans because of their ethnic background. In her dissent, Justice Sotomayor references and quotes from the dissent in a case that upheld wrongly the internment of Japanese Americans. The Supreme Court has since reversed that Korematsu decision, but at the time, there was a dissent who called out, just as Sotomayor called out today, to all of us to be our best authentic selves, to not take part in discrimination, and to live our values as Americans. And so as I celebrate July 4th, that's what I'll be thinking about, and I do want to acknowledge with us today is Representative Breonna Tattone. Breonna is the first transgender lawmaker elected here in Colorado. We have our first openly gay governor in the nation here in Colorado. And so I stand proud of how Colorado has committed to equality and treating everyone in a way that is fair and just. And with that, let me turn the microphone over to Shara Smith. Next, who's next? Sure. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Shara Smith, S-H-A-R-A-S-M-I-T-H. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the CEO of the Interfaith Alliance of Colorado. I'm joined by Rabbi Joe Black of Temple Emmanuel, Kurt Kaufman, Ministerial Associate at First Baptist Church of Denver, interfaith leader Marcella Shefflin, and Reverend Dr. Jenny Witcher of Juniper Formation of the United Church of Christ. The Torah states, "Love your neighbor as yourself." The Christian Bible states, "Therefore, let us stop passing judgment on one another. Instead, make up your mind not to put any stumbling block or obstacle in the way of a brother or sister." You know, when I first heard this decision, my immediate thought was, this is bad for the LGBTQ plus community. But then I realized that it's not just bad for the LGBTQ plus community, it's also bad for people of color, for immigrants, for marginalized groups, for all of us. Because this decision allows businesses to use free speech in order to turn away customers they would rather not serve. This decision allows us to bask in the weakness of our biases, our fears, our ignorance, rather than confront them. It allows for the lesser version of ourselves to go unchallenged and calls it free speech. For members of communities that have historically been targeted, whether based on sexual orientation, race, ethnicity, faith, or other factors, we know all too well what it means to be told, "We don't serve your kind here." We know all too well that these attitudes are not about speech or faith, but about discrimination. International Buddhist scholar and author Dr. Daisaku Ikeda states, "Unless we can build a society that regards human beings not as a means to a goal, but as the goal itself, we will remain forever a society of discrimination, unhappiness, and inequality in a world of animality where the strong prey upon the weak. We will simply repeat the same abusive patterns." Businesses that are open to the public must be open to all. Denying service to someone because of who they are is discrimination, not speech. Now, we all have a right to free speech. We all have a right to practice our own faith traditions and beliefs. However, that does not mean that we are free to deny others their freedoms based on our own biases. No one should face discrimination because of who they are or who they love. As members of the faith community, we are deeply saddened by this decision and will continue to work together with those who are routinely targeted for hatred and discrimination to let them know you are loved, you are seen, you are welcome. Dr. Daisaku Ikeda summed up what I think is an important point for us to all remember in this moment. He stated, "Human rights, democracy, and peace are a single entity. When one disintegrates, they all disintegrate. Leaders in all spheres of society must engrave this truth in their minds. Everyone has a right to flower, to reveal his, her, or their full potential as a human being, to fulfill their mission in this world. You have this right, and so does everyone else. To scorn and violate people's human rights destroys the natural order of things. We must become people who prize human rights and respect others. Shalom Aleichem. Assalamu alaikum. Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. Grace and peace to you."
Thank you, Shara. We'll now hear from Rex Fuller.
Hello, my name is Rex Fuller, R-E-X, F-U-L-L-E-R. I use he, him pronouns, and I am the CEO of the Center on Colfax, which is Denver's LGBTQ community center. And this decision is outrageous. Today, 6 justices on the Supreme Court took another in a series of steps designed to roll back 50 years of progress and return us to a time when discrimination was legal. The court just said it's fine to discriminate against anyone you don't like as long as you use your religion as an excuse. That's astonishing. What's next? Putting up a whites only sign in your window or a sign that says no Jews allowed? We've seen signs like that before, and oftentimes religious beliefs were used to justify them. Though we have not always lived up to our ideals, this country was founded on a simple principle that everyone deserves to be treated equally. For 50 years, settled law and common decency said that when a business opens its doors to the public, that business should be open to all, a core principle that is at the heart of how we treat one another. Today, the court said that doesn't matter anymore. It's even more infuriating that they announced this decision during LGBTQ Pride Month, when at the same time, dozens of state legislatures are passing legislation rolling back years of progress for the LGBTQ community. It's not difficult to imagine what other civil rights that took us years to earn are now at risk. Our theme for Denver Pride this year was Be Proud Out Loud. Today's decision demonstrates the need for everyone in the LGBTQ community to stand up and have our voices heard. Today's decision is the reason we need a Pride Parade. We need to stand up for our community and for anyone who feels marginalized, ostracized, diminished, or attacked because of who they are and who they love. Discrimination in the name of religion is still discrimination.
Thank you, Rex. AJ from the LGBTQ State Chamber of Commerce.
My name is AJ Sheikh, AJ, S-H-A-I-K-H. I go by he, him pronouns, and I am chair of the Colorado LGBTQ Chamber of Commerce. Firstly, I would like to express my appreciation to One Colorado for including us here today. Thank you. The Colorado Chamber of Commerce was founded in 1992, the same year that Colorado voters approved Amendment 2, which prevented municipalities from enacting anti-discrimination laws protecting gay, lesbian, or bisexual people. LGBTQ business owners wanted to assert their existence and needed to know who their allies were in the face of discrimination in intentions of Amendment 2. Today's passing takes us back to 1992, a year of great turbulence for the LGBTQ community. In the coming weeks, months, years, we'll see the harmful effects of this decision play out. What we know is that this decision is a setback for the LGBTQ rights and equality. It sends a message that businesses can discriminate against LGBTQ people and people simply because they disagree with their sexual orientation or gender identities. This decision will have chilling effects on LGBTQ people and businesses in Colorado across the country. It will make LGBTQ people less likely to patronize businesses that they believe may discriminate against them. This will make them afraid to speak out or express their identities in public, and can make it more difficult for LGBTQ people to find housing, employment, and other essential services. This decision will have a negative impact on the economy, as it will discourage LGBTQ people from spending their money in businesses that they believe may discriminate against them. The LGBTQ community is not going to give up without a fight. Despite this setback, the Colorado LGBTQ Chamber of Commerce and our membership base will continue to fight for civil rights and liberties. If you're a business owner and want to make LGBTQ consumers feel safe to purchase goods and services, please seek certification by the Colorado LGBTQ Chamber of Commerce. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, from One Colorado, Nadine Bridges.
Good morning, y'all. My name is Nadine Bridges, NADINEBRIDGES. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Executive Director of One Colorado. The decision made by the Supreme Court today is heartbreaking. At a time when our leaders should be bringing our nation together, this only creates divisiveness and a pathway to discrimination. This ruling is radical and reckless, and it threatens to return Colorado and our country to a time when businesses regularly turn people away because of who they are. Business owners have the freedom to express their beliefs, but this ruling undermines decades of settled law case and public norms affirming that once you open the doors of your business to the public, you should be open to all. Colorado's non-discrimination laws exist to respect the rights of every person to obtain the goods and services they need, because exclusion in the public market hurts us all. This case was never about weddings or websites. It was deliberately fabricated to undermine the civil rights laws that protect all of us from discrimination. The U.S. Supreme Court's decision to take the case, let alone rule in this way, is further evidence of how this court has been compromised. For everyone who expects our country to deliver on its promise of equality for all, this dangerous decision is a clear call to get engaged in our work and join the fight to protect the fundamental freedoms of LGBTQ+ Coloradans and their families. I know that businesses across Colorado and the majority of Coloradans disagree with this dangerous ruling and support LGBTQ+ equality. We call on all fair-minded businesses and owners to condemn discrimination and continue their long-standing commitments to treat everyone with dignity and respect and to remain open to all. Joy, happiness, authenticity, the ability to move through this world. We all deserve this. Everyone in this room deserves to be seen and heard as who they are. No one should be afraid to go to any business and be turned away. No one. I think about my own father, my great-grandparents, the stories that they have told, and now I have the opportunity, unfortunately, to tell those stories too. This is unacceptable. We have to stand up and we have to hold our leaders who are supposed to serve us accountable to this type of harm in our communities. I want to thank all of our leadership, especially AG Weiser, for their work in this. We will stand together. Please stand with One Colorado and make sure that we all can live with joy, happiness, and authenticity, and the ability to move through the world freely. Thank you.
We would now take any questions from members of the media. Yes.
Hi, Quentin Young from Colorado. What specifically might you suggest as a potential state response, a legal response to this ruling? And I open that question to other organizations. What kind of civic or nonprofit responses might you suggest in response?
Thank you, Quentin. I wanted to underline what Nadine said. The most important response to this ruling is for every business, every nonprofit to say proudly, we serve everyone. As Justice Sotomayor's dissent makes plain, everyone has a choice and everyone has a responsibility towards our nation's highest ideals. Those ideals are of inclusion, that we see everybody and that love is love. That's the most important response we can show here as individuals, as businesses, as leaders, as allies. On the legal front, we are going to do all we can to work to limit the impact of the decision and ultimately to overturn this decision. Like the Dobbs decision of last year, this decision is not what our Constitution, what our democratic republic stands for, which is founded on the promise of equal justice for all, and that work begins today as well. Yeah.
Michael Carlick, Colorado Politics, and that. To follow up on that, is there a way in your view to to amend the accommodations clause of CADA to both provide a greater degree of protection that exists as of this moment, but also abide by the court's decision?
The court's decision creates a First Amendment exception, or a loophole, to this basic principle that we have celebrated, that any business who opens up his or her doors has to serve all comers. We're going to work to limit the impact of that loophole as much as possible, but from what we have seen thus far, we don't see any need to change the nature of our anti-discrimination laws. Yes?
There's as I'm sure you're aware now, in the case, the plaintiff said that she got a request from a couple. That person has now said that they have submitted the request. Were you aware that there was confusion around this and about her claim?
Our position in this case has been there is no website development happening. There is no business operating. This was a made-up case without the benefit of any real facts or customers. The Supreme Court, in our view, should never have decided this case or addressed the merits without any basis in reality. We are, unfortunately now, in the aftermath of the decision, having to deal with it, but in terms of what the Supreme Court should have done, it should not have decided this case.
So are you saying that request was fabricated?
I don't know any of the details around the specifics, but what I do know is that unlike cases where you actually have facts that involve real customers and real decisions, in this case, there were no customers. There were no websites made. There was no business. Unfortunately, when you have hypothesized facts, you don't tend to get the same quality decisions because it gives the court a lot of leeway that facts can actually lead to better decisions and make clear what's at stake. The problem also, when you have people being turned away, you have real victims. This case, the victims were not seen in the court's majority opinion. Justice Sotomayor sees and names from Stonewall to the present the history of discrimination that this case will then give license to. Because there was no one turned away in this case, we didn't actually have to struggle with the people who are going to suffer from the outcome.
Can you talk a little bit about the difference between expressive speech that's now protected and providing ordinary commercial services?
This case is an invitation to more litigation and mischief because it invites businesses to say, whoever they are, that they have this expressive interest that creates a loophole. We don't yet know how broad that loophole will be or what qualifies. It is clear this decision is not limited to one group, LGBTQ individuals. It's not limited to one type of expressive service, a website. Booksellers, photographers, and others are likely to be able to take advantage of this loophole. So the short answer is we don't yet know how broad this category is. Our work to protect equality and to limit the damage from this decision will start today.
In Justice Gorsuch's opinion, he repeatedly referenced that the state stipulated that Ms. Smith would not turn away customers because of their sexual orientation, and yet what you're arguing for the Supreme Court in here today is that this decision will have the effect of turning away people based on their sexual orientation. Why would you stipulate to that if you believe that that is what she was fundamentally trying to do here?
This case has spanned multiple administrations. Stipulations go back before I was Attorney General, so I can't speak specifically to them, but here's what I can say. When you say, I will not make websites for same-sex couples, you are turning away LGBTQ individuals, period.
So what happens next legally, Attorney General? Are you going to wait for another case? I mean, this is kind of settled law now, but you said you don't want to change Colorado's civil rights laws, so I don't understand how that squares.
The First Amendment exception based on expressive interest is now the law of the land pursuant to this decision. As cases are pursued under Colorado anti-discrimination law, individuals may choose to take advantage of that exception, and it will have to be litigated and defined through our legal processes. That can happen at any time, and as Nadine Bridges said, everyone can say, I'm not going to do that, because that's not who we are in Colorado. We serve everybody. So it remains to be seen how many businesses will try to take advantage of this loophole, and if they do, then there'll be a legal process to determine whether or not it's appropriate in the facts of the particular case.
I.e., like that, you would make a determination, the Civil Rights Commission would make the determination that that business is creative enough.
For example, you put your finger on one of the issues, which was just asked about. You have to be using an expressive interest to be able to take advantage of this loophole. That would have to be determined depending on the facts of the case. Any final questions? Let me close by thanking you all for being here. This case is important to Colorado. The response here about who we are and about the work we do together is the message that I'm going to focus on. As we close out Pride Month, as we approach July 4th, we cannot let this opinion, which is wrongly decided and ultimately will and must be overturned, define us. We define us, we stand for our values, and we stand together in the spirit that we talked about today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. As I mentioned before, our statement is out, and if you need, there's also hard copies here on the desk. This concludes the press conference. Thank you very much.